It's the state of the art in money. It's a new form of electronic money. It's already become the gold standard of digital currency. You know how email changed old-fashioned mail forever? Well, Bitcoin is changing money forever. Based on some old technologies and some new technologies, Bitcoin is the result of combining the very state-of-the-art in cryptographic security, plus the idea of a limited quantity commodity similar to gold or silver, where there's only so much of it, and using it as money, and the idea of a massive number of computers connected by the internet, forming a strong, resilient, indestructible peer-to-peer network. It's called a cryptocurrency. Since the invention of Bitcoin, money will never be the same. The next question everyone asks is, why would I use Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the world's first completely decentralized currency. The history of mankind has never seen a currency like this. This means that there's no issuing entity, therefore no single point of failure. In many ways, Bitcoin is more secure than your bank. If your bank were to fail, your money could be gone forever. The Bitcoin network is made up of millions of computers all over the world connected via the internet. The entire internet would have to go away in order for the Bitcoin network to fail. Bitcoin is as easy as sending an email, just one click. Bitcoin payments are sent with one click, just like an email. And transactions are always as free and as fast as email. Bitcoin has 0 transaction fees. In the United States, merchants pay $45 billion a year in credit card transaction fees. And for what? So that the transactions can be reversed as chargebacks up to 6 months later? That doesn't seem fair at all. Bitcoin transactions are free, whereas credit cards and other online payment systems typically cost 3 to 5% or more per transaction, plus various other exorbitant fees. Bitcoin usage and transactions are always free. It doesn't matter if you send 1 cent or $1 million, the transaction cost is always the same, free. There's no such thing as a chargeback with Bitcoin. Payments are irreversible. This is great for merchants. No matter whether you accept Bitcoin payments for your business or otherwise, payments cannot be reversed. There's no such thing as a chargeback, no way to get a bounced check, no reversed transactions, not with Bitcoin. Payments can only be refunded if and when the recipient voluntarily, as a separate new transaction, decides to send the money back. This protects merchants from fraud. Credit cards and PayPal can and often do reverse transactions up to 6 months later. Bitcoin is as anonymous as you want it to be. This is very unique in electronic currencies. Just like with cash, transactions can be totally anonymous. Transactions are only identified by your Bitcoin address, and you can have as many Bitcoin addresses as you want. You can create another new Bitcoin address with one click anytime you want to. So Bitcoin transactions can be made to be as anonymous as you want them to be. Financial privacy. Gone are the days of identity theft. In the old days, credit cards required merchants to have proof positive of your identity in order to shop there. Because a Bitcoin address can only be used to receive money, it cannot be used to extract money. With Bitcoin, the merchant only needs to know 2 things. Did you pay? And where do you want your stuff sent to? Isn't that the way it should be? Does your banker really need to know what you buy online? Your account cannot be frozen. No one can freeze your account and keep your money with Bitcoin, as long as you keep control of your Bitcoins yourself and don't keep the Bitcoins on an online bank or wallet service. See the Security tab for recommendations. No Big Brother. Third parties cannot prevent or control your transactions. Transfer money easily through the internet without having to trust middlemen, no central bank, no central authority. There's no censorship of who you're allowed to send money to. No more blocking who you can make payments or donations to just because someone doesn't agree. It's not a bank, it's not PayPal. What may be the best feature of all, bye-bye PayPal, bye-bye bank. It's more secure than online banking existing in the world today. Traditional banks use encryption when you log on to their online banking. The cryptography technology used in Bitcoin is even more secure. In other words, if it were to ever become possible to hack into it, then all the world's banking would already be compromised. With today's known technology, experts all agree it's absolutely unhackable and unbreakable. Bitcoin is transparent and verified. Bitcoin is a free open source software project, which means it has total transparency. Millions of programmers all over the world see every bit of the program's source code. They constantly monitor it, study it, and report on it. to verify that there are no flaws or irregularities. With Bitcoin, you can send payments to anyone worldwide. Bitcoin has no artificial national boundaries or limitations on where money can be sent or on how much or how little can be sent. You can now use Bitcoin to shop online for millions of items or make a donation to a charity or organization. And you can even make purchases at physical stores and shops and restaurants that now accept Bitcoin using a free app on your phone or any device with a web browser. There's no central bank. No privately owned Federal Reserve central bank can print more money for themselves. Not in Bitcoin anyway. The value of each Bitcoin does not go down when the privately owned corporation known as the Fed decides to print more dollars. In fact, Bitcoin might even go up in value as it triggers more people to seek out alternatives to storing their money in the world's fiat currencies. Which leads to what may be the best benefit of all. There will never be more than 21 million Bitcoins. That's right, there's a limited number of Bitcoins. The number of Bitcoins is limited by the design of the network. This number can never be increased. And Bitcoins are virtually infinitely divisible. There'll never be a shortage of Bitcoins because of this. Currently, Bitcoins are divisible up to 8 decimal places. For example, you can send someone 0.00000001 of a Bitcoin. In the future, as the value of Bitcoin goes up, you might be sending your favorite coffee shop 3 millionths of a Bitcoin for that cafe latte. Also in the future, Bitcoin could become even more divisible if needed, as the value of one Bitcoin becomes larger and larger. Okay, sounds pretty good. So the next question I always get is, can I exchange Bitcoins into normal cash? Of course you can. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, there are many ways to do it. You can exchange Bitcoins for cash in person, or by postal mail or FedEx, or direct deposit into your bank account. There are many ways to do it. On this site, bitcoinme.com, just click on the Sell tab at the top for more details about that. What else can you do with Bitcoins? Well, you can sell them, you can hold on to them and watch them grow in value. You can spend them, shop with Bitcoin products and services you want. You can donate them to charities and causes that are important to you. And of course, you can accept them. You can accept Bitcoins for payment in your business no matter what you sell. Bitcoin is absolutely ideal for charitable organizations that are doing amazing work, like epicchange.org, for example. People can donate with one click. They can donate tiny amounts or large amounts with no transaction fees. And of course, many small amounts really add up. The other thing people do with Bitcoin is invest. What type of investment goes up 1,336% per year? Obviously, many people are looking at Bitcoin as an amazing investment opportunity, especially getting in on the ground floor of such a revolutionary technology at this early stage. One Bitcoin was about 22 cents around December 8th, 2010, and now one Bitcoin is trading for about $2.94 as of December 8th, 2011. If our math is correct, that's about an increase of more than 13 times its value in only 12 months. At that rate of growth over the course of the year, that was an annual return on investment of 1,336.36%. In the same year that gold went up 25% and silver went up 25%, Bitcoin went up 1,336%. Bitcoin is seen by many as an excellent investment. So for more information about
tax implications of Bitcoin and the technical nature of cryptocurrencies, let's begin. Traditionally, tax havens are defined by their geographical locations and their legal jurisdictions, and individuals and corporations who are seeking to preserve their wealth and the preservation of their wealth would seek out tax havens from protection against high tax brackets and predatory taxation. And cryptocurrencies are a very novel and unique take on a tax haven, because not only are they not located geographically, they care nothing about physical boundaries, but the technical nature of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies makes them largely subversive to traditional taxation. And governments have identified the potential of Bitcoin to facilitate tax avoidance. Traditionally, anti-tax evasion mechanisms cannot successfully address Bitcoin-based tax avoidance, and this is because national political institutions and taxation initiatives have no way of levying taxation on the Bitcoin network itself. Now, the German government has recently suggested taxing Bitcoin as capital assets. Namely, taxpayers would have to report income when they dispose of Bitcoin in the same way they report income on the disposition of stocks, bonds, and other financial assets held for investment. Many other nation states, first world countries, are following in the footsteps of Germany and labeling Bitcoin as a sort of capital assets. And the idea is that this taxation is only relevant when exchanging Bitcoin into national currencies, and as it says, disposing of Bitcoin back into national currencies, where one would have to pay a capital gain or a capital loss. So the taxation of Bitcoin comes into play when you're exchanging into national currencies. However, the Bitcoin network itself is subversive to national taxation. However, we will argue that the Bitcoin network itself is not without taxation altogether, something we'll describe. Now, the Bitcoin network itself defines taxation differently than traditional national politics would. With the Bitcoin network, taxation takes a voluntary approach, and that is the transaction fees of the Bitcoin network represent a voluntary pay-for-performance taxation. On the Bitcoin network, you are free to choose any amount to tie as a fee to your transaction. You can attach no fee or you can attach a high fee, and depending on the amount of fees you attach to that transaction, it will be queued by miners to be taken care of sooner or later, depending on the higher or the lower transaction fee. And interestingly, users who wanted to get their Bitcoin transaction verified by miners very quickly when faced with a threat, such as a collapse of an exchange, have chosen to tie high transaction fees to the movement of their money. And in doing so, miners were able to verify their transactions very quickly, a situation where negligible or zero transaction fees on their transactions may have proved hazardous for these users. So in the Bitcoin network, taxation takes a voluntary pay-for-performance place. There is taxation built into Bitcoin by default, and is the transaction fees which accompany the movement of money. This brings us to the conclusion of account holds value. Let's begin. In a nutshell, Bitcoin is valuable because it is both useful and scarce. Bitcoin is scarce by design in that the currency is capped at 21 million units. There will never be more than 21 million units of Bitcoin in circulation, and we know this to be true based on the source code of the technology. Bitcoin is useful because it allows us to do things with money we've never previously been able to do. Bitcoin represents a sort of programmable money, and it operates on a digital economy which has no physical borders, and therefore represents perfect portability, perfect divisibility, among many other interesting functions that come with this form of money. The blockchain network Bitcoin is built upon as well allows us to upload digital files and information which can be stored in this network and verified cryptographically without the requirement of trust. The blockchain represents a sort of ledger technology that's accessible to anyone, anywhere, while simultaneously being owned by no one. Truly, the Bitcoin protocol is incredibly useful, and we're just beginning to scratch the surface of some of its very interesting uses. What does Bitcoin allow us to do? Essentially, you can send money anywhere, anytime, to anyone, and there's essentially no limits on the movement of money. When you use Bitcoin, you are in full control of your economic livelihood, and the Bitcoin protocol and technology allows you to act like your own bank account. You can send this money with as little as you like in terms of fees, or you can also attach fees, which will ensure that your transaction is taken care of first in the queue of mining blocks. You can also send money potentially anonymously, although it's worthy to be mentioned that almost no one sends money anonymously with Bitcoin today. And as we mentioned previously, the blockchain allows us to verify information of all kinds with the proof of work algorithm, from proof of ownership, proof of existence, proof of publishment, and many, many more very interesting use cases that are beginning to emerge. One of the economic fundamentals of Bitcoin is that it allows its users to gain a sort of independence from traditional national economies. And one example of this is in early 2013, in March 2013, the citizens of Cyprus had as much as 70% of their financial livelihood and their savings confiscated by government mandated authorities because their banking system was going under. And during this time, a lot of these citizens, as well as speculators around the world, essentially drove up the price of Bitcoin because they saw it as a safe haven for some of their purchasing power. And if you look at the chart on the far right end is the run-up that we've seen in US dollars during this time. And this actually only shows a fraction of the run-up because the price went from 20 all the way up to 266 US dollars during this bank run on the citizens of Cyprus. After that, there was a price correction, but it goes to show that Bitcoin, because it is separate and independent from the national economy, represents a sort of safe haven for financial turbulence. And something we'll look in later is how this safe haven is actually anti-fragile, or benefits from the disorder